Hey, folks. Welcome back to the Peaceful Way podcast, where we discuss the mechanisms, ideas, and concepts behind creating a more peaceful and nonviolent world. Well, today is going to be a gooder, this episode. In fact, of my short catalog of episodes, this may be probably one of my more important ones. I think just highlighting some stuff that's going on in my country, in Canada. And I'm going to cover what was the worst shooting in Canadian history on April 18th and 19th. But before we get into that, I have a very special guest, my brother, the older, Skyler Swaim.
Hello.
And I thought he's really good at sniffing out kind of stories like this and catching the BS that's often propagated. But I also think it's important to explore these topics and these events, especially these very violent events, to find out the motivations, the underlying conditions that led to this horrific event that happened in Nova Scotia in 2020. But yeah, Skyler, how's it going, man?
Really good. I'm really happy to be here. This is gonna be gooder for sure.
Oh yeah. Before we get into it, do you have maybe just, if you have anything you want to plug, people can contact you, find you?
You can always find me on Facebook at to the Gulag podcast, and also on minds.com at to the Gulag as well. I'm there. You can send me a Facebook message or a message on Minds if you want to come find me out.
Cool. So do you want to just give us like a real quick synopsis of what happened, and then we'll get into the dirty details afterwards?
Well, I guess the quickest about it, it's very obvious, is that this dude allegedly went on this crime of passion killing spree in Nova Scotia and just killed a heap of people, seemingly at random. Although I think as we go through this, we'll find that it's not as random as we've been led to believe. But and apparently he really, really loved cops, which I also think that as we go on, we'll find out that is not true. And it's also been covered up as well. Cover up's a strong word. Any real journalism done into this at all has been subject to a smear campaign by the RCMP, as well as the more corporate media types in our country. So anyways, yeah, that's the brief synopsis. Sick dude went and killed a bunch of allegedly peaceful people, and that does not it's not good if we want to have a peaceful society. We need to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so just kind of a recap too is Gabriel Wortman on April 18th killed 22 people on over a 13-hour rampage. What we've been mostly told is they have not been able to identify a motive, or they at least haven't, the RCMP in this country have not released a motive or assigned a motive to what he's done. But I think we can probably connect some dots through the series of events that happened. So yeah, why don't we just get into it, and let's start. So Gabriel Wortman, this was the guy who carried out these attacks. He was a denturist out of Dartmouth, which is basically, it's like a twin city of Halifax. Mm-hmm. I guess it's from what I understand, it's I've been to Halifax very briefly once before, but I guess Dartmouth is kind of across the bridge basically, and he had a practice there, a denturist practice, but he also owned multiple properties throughout Nova Scotia, and he that's kind of like the basic profile of this guy. But we'll get into like a quick timeline of events, and then we'll kind of interject to whatever. If you have some thoughts or opinions, just feel free to interject on
no problem,
any of these. So the first sort of public record of Wortman is October 29th, 2001. Wortman assaults a 15-year-old boy who was waiting for a bus near his business. Allegedly, Wortman was upset that the teenager was waiting too close to his business. Then an unidentified friend of Wortman's came around the corner and beat the kid with a crowbar along with Wortman. Normally, this would be assault with a deadly weapon. Wortman, who was 33 at the time of the arrest, ultimately pleaded guilty in January 2002 and was given a conditional discharge and 9 months probation, despite the fact that he assaulted a minor, which is a more serious offense in Canada.
Super serious.
Yeah, if you assault a minor.
Like, you can't beat up your own kid
yeah.
and get away this easy.
Yeah, it's really insane. And even this, going back this far to 2001, is like there's a lot of eyebrows raised about even this situation.
Yeah, definitely some red flags for sure.
Yeah, and like, how did he get off so easy? Was that all this kid was doing? Was he just waiting at a bus
there's
stop?
a ton of questions and no information that we could easily find.
Yeah, or was it, was something else happening? Was the kid like buying some weed or something, right? And
good point.
Wortman didn't like that or something.
And this unidentified friend who just happens to be armed with a crowbar. So we're just going to set this up now. That's a very like organized kind of gangster.
Yeah, that's like mafia.
Yeah, definitely gangster type way you would go about things, right?
Totally.
So right from the get-go, from this first kind of public incident that we know about, there's already some weird stuff going on.
Yeah, and then the light sentence, which would lead me to believe either there was something on the kid or he entered into some kind of plea deal or something.
Right.
Where
there's more going on, probably.
The RCMP let him off easy. And again, I just want to say a lot of this is just our speculation.
Yep. Lots of it's pure conjecture, but just based on what we've read.
Yeah, but I also want to say a lot of what's been coming out of the mainstream media has also been pure conjecture. And if we're we're
literally no better than them. So
if we're gonna play the game of conjecture, well, I'm gonna put forward a hypothesis that I think is more likely than the hypothesis that has been being put forward by a lot of mainstream news articles, particularly CBC, CTV, and Global News, who I think have been particularly egregious in their coverage. And
the devil's three-way, as we know them in Canada.
Yeah, so exactly. They're really, I would say borderline irresponsible in the lack of questions they've asked, the lack of investigative journalists. But that and this isn't saying that there hasn't been some good coverage of it. There has been, but I've actually found like more in-depth coverage in like The Guardian from the UK,
which is just odd because they're so far removed,
right? Than I have from like our own state taxpayer funded
media.
Yeah. So anyways, you want to do the next one here?
Yeah, sure. So there's an undisclosed date in 2004. A friend of Wortman falls on hard times and needs help. Wortman scams him into discreetly selling the house, then evicts the man and sells all the contents. So he takes advantage of a friend of his and basically uses it to make a bunch of money, I would assume. and totally screws his friend over. This is cited in a global news article about the Nova Scotia gunman. You can find it online if you just search it.
So just a note too, I am going to make this document available that we're using. We've written everything out, and we've sourced all our claims that we're making. We'll tell you when something's conjecture and when something is a factually sourced claim.
Yeah.
So everything is sourced. So if people want to go and look at the sources, they can. I'm gonna get it live, and you can find it on all my social media, or I can send it to you personally too if you're interested. So yeah, and again, this is another odd thing, because this isn't the first time Wortman does this. And these kind of scams,
another odd thing. Yeah.
These kind of scams also, it is not, again, going back to the organized crime connection that we believe is there. Wortman, or I would say organized crime, they have been involved in like Canada Revenue Agency scams. So that would be, like the taxman scams. And then they've also been involved in creating like shell companies and stuff as money laundering operations for their for the drug trade. So again, this doesn't necessarily mean that this was an organized crime thing, but it is sort of indicative of someone who would be involved in organized crime. Okay, moving along. Yeah. June 10th, or June 2010. So there was a family reunion of Wortman's dad, Paul Wortman. And apparently Wortman had a long-lost brother who was a younger brother, but Paul Wortman gave him up for adoption. Okay, the brother got in contact with the Wortmans again, and he was invited to attend this family reunion, or the birthday party of Paul Wortman. Paul Wortman being Gabriel Wortman's dad. The brother, his new adopted name was Jeff Samuelson. At the party, there was an argument that broke out where Gabriel ended up threatening to kill his father over a property dispute. And again, this is another thing, like lots of odd property disputes involved with Wortman. And the police were called to break the party up.
And we also don't know how inebriated anyone would have been at that point either, which would be a totally reasonable assumption to make, is that he had just some dispute with his dad and was just too drunk and handled it the wrong way. Yeah. However, I mean, do we assume that he was that drunk when he beat up a child earlier as well, right? Yeah. So I would think not. I would think this is setting up a certain line of behavior with this guy.
It's like a psychological profile almost. Yeah. Now it is a lot of people, again, there's been a lot of conjecture in the media that Wortman was this like alcoholic and drank all the time. And I mean, I don't know.
It's possible.
It's possible.
Possible.
It's possible.
I mean, he was a Nova Scotian, right?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, like, if you talk to any Nova Scotian, they would be like, no, that's what Nova Scotians do. There's nothing particularly special. Anyways, another undisclosed date in 2011, Wortman threatens an RCMP officer for unknown reasons.
It wasn't just though; it was it was a specific RCMP officer, which we were not able to find any details on, but it wasn't. It was specifically this RC. So I assume that they had some kind of interaction that he didn't like, or that wasn't good for him, or something. But he specifically threatens this guy and actually goes after him armed as well. Like, this was a pretty big deal.
Yeah. You want to do the next one?
Reports of illegal weapon stash and domestic abuse. The RCMP uncharacteristically do nothing. And apparently the complaint was also purged. That was in 2013. It was an undisclosed date. That was so that specific complaint was done from one of his neighbors, who was a veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces, and she had reported to the RCs that he was beating his partner and also had a huge stash of weapons. And basically the RCs showed up and they did absolutely nothing. And according to other ANON RCMP sources, that is very uncharacteristic, and that's typically not how they deal with things, as we'll find out as we go on.
Yeah. And again, the owning of illegal weapons, especially in Canada, where we have relatively strict gun laws, is another thing to just make a note of.
Treated very seriously.
Yeah, exactly. So if there is an accusation,
the cops aren't just going to do nothing.
Yeah,
basically, they'll basically kick your door in before they come and ask you about it.
Yeah,
and see what's up.
Yeah. So on an undisclosed date in 2015, Wortman's uncle lent him a house that he purchased in Portapique while selling his Edmonton condominium. Wortman refused to release the property back to him, claiming he was owed money, until the uncle eventually sold it. One of the buyers later became the victim in the killings. So again, this is part of Wortman's MO. He's into conning people out of properties, and
also holds grudges, apparently.
Yeah, and holds grudges too. February 12th, 2020. Actually, you want to do this one?
Yeah, sure. There was a odd ticket issued to Wortman in a rural area while the RCMP were involved in an anti-Hells Angels operation in the general vicinity. This has been described by anonymous RCMP sources as a cover for information drops or a cover for an informant. So again, we can't confirm that these RC sources are credible or anything, but this is just what's been reported to the journalist, who I believe that we're going off of, who I believe is pretty legitimate. Whether he's getting legitimate information or not, I don't know. But the premise of this ticket is that there was a bunch of Hells Angels anti-gang activity going on in a certain area, and Wortman happened to be there, and he was actually there in one of his made-up undercover cop cars, and he allegedly got pulled over in the middle of nowhere on a very rural road where there's no way the cops would be there waiting, and issued a ticket. And so what the RC sources are saying is that this is a way that you would cover your ass to the boys in the club in case you got in case somebody wanted to know where you were, or
starts asking questions.
Yeah, starts asking questions, or what time you were in a particular area, and then it's an alibi essentially, and then it's a good way to also communicate maybe some information, or to drop off a package to your contact in the RCMP, whichever it would be. So that's what this is alleged. And again, this being alleged to be this is because of the fact that it was a very strange area for him to be just randomly pulled over for.
Yeah. And
that is sourced in the articles that will be attaching to this document.
Yeah. March. So we're getting closer and closer now to the actual events of the shooting.
Yeah.
March 30th, 2020. Wortman withdraws $475,000 from a Brinks depot in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, I believe it was at a CIBC branch, but also I guess doubled as a Brinks depot where where the Brinks is like the armored vehicles that transport money. I guess they have depots and they drop money off at particular branches. Both RCMP and CIBC confirmed that this is consistent with how police funnel money to confidential informants, and that it is not an option available to private customers. Okay, hold on there. Now the RCMP and the I can't remember what position he has, but his name is Campbell. He's basically the guy overseeing this. And he has come out and denied that this is the case and said that Wortman has no connection to the RCMP at all. However, the facts of this was actually a video that was leaked to a journalist from Maclean's of Wortman withdrawing the money from the Brinks depot. Okay, and they were able to get documents confirming how much he took out. So this looks like some kind of RCMP agent or informant. The RCMP have repeatedly denied any kind of special relationship with Wortman. However, as per their own policy, they are allowed to deceive the public in the interest of an ongoing investigation or witness protection programs. Okay, so it's actually in the RCMP's own documents or their own policies that they can deceive us. Okay, so I would take whatever they say in this ongoing investigation with a grain of salt. We cannot, and maybe they are legitimately protecting people, maybe not, I don't know. But I think if we're going to try and get to the bottom of what happened, it has to be taken with a grain of salt. Okay, so that was like kind of all the Wortman's activities, who he was. To me, it seems clear he was most likely involved in some kind of organized crime. There's lots of witnesses who have confirmed this. He apparently hung out with people who were also involved in organized crime. One of them being a man by the name of Peter Griffin, not from Family Guy,
which is so funny.
Yeah, I know.
Wow. Who is a Mexican cartel dude.
Yeah, connected with MS-13 and La Familia from Mexico.
Reformed now, according to everything we can find. We don't know anything about the man. He actually doesn't seem that bad of a dude or anything like that. But
well, apparently he also did the decals for the police vehicles.
So this guy, Peter Griffin, worked at a decal shop in which they believe that Wortman was able to reproduce the RCMP decals from.
Yeah, and made basically a very precise mock-up vehicle. Yeah,
it's not the exact one.
Yeah.
However, the business itself said that it did find an employee, but it wouldn't name it. And they also said that they rectified it, which I assume means that they fired that employee. We have no confirmation on whether or not that's Peter Griffin.
Yeah.
So we don't know really anything about the dude other than his name.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're getting into the actual events of the killings. So I'm going mostly off of a timeline released by the RCMP. However, I've inserted a few extra things that weren't on their timeline and have been confirmed by other sources. So just keep that in mind as I go on. So some time prior to 10 p.m. on April 18th, Wortman assaults and binds his girlfriend, apparently handcuffs her. She proceeds then to escape and hides overnight in the woods. 10:01 p.m. April 18th. Police received their first 911 call about the shooting in rural Port-Peak. 10:26 p.m. April 18th. Officers arrive in Port-Peak and find dead bodies laying on roads and in homes, as well as a number of buildings on fire. A surviving gunshot victim informs the police that the shooter is driving a police cruiser. The police identify 7 locations where there were 13 victims found dead in the area.
So maybe we should just stop there for 1 second and just see how egregious. Imagine you are part of law enforcement and you pull up on a scene like that. There's bodies in a specific block everywhere.
Yeah, it's a massacre.
Yeah, it's a massacre.
It's like
not only
just walked into like some kind of like Vietnam.
Yeah, some movie
Yeah.
where somebody came in, killed all the villagers, and started burning down their
buildings
houses.
are on fire.
Like that. So immediately you would be like DEFCON 5 or whatever the rating is. You're on red alert. Like this is real. We got like an active shooter going on. However, that's not what we find that the police do as we go on here. So that was at 10:26 when the officers arrived at Portapique for the first time. So at 10:35, a witness sees a vehicle believed to be the gunman's leaving Portapique through a field. So, but that's a 9-minute gap, 10:26 to 10:35. Yeah. That means that this motherfucker was there when the cops were there. Yeah. And obviously this witness goes flying over to the cops and says, I seen this guy. He's driving through the fields right now. I assume that that's what's being said.
Yeah. It's hard to say, but
it's very hard.
That's insane.
That is insane, but that's what's being reported as a witness reporting. So at 11:12, Wortman arrives at an industrial area in Debert, Nova Scotia, roughly 26 kilometers from the scene of the first shootings. At 11:32, the Nova Scotia RCMP, these motherfuckers, make a Twitter post stating that they are responding to a firearms complaint in Portapique and ask people to avoid the area and lock their doors. So
hold on.
Yeah.
Okay. A firearms complaint.
So what? I mean, when you say firearm, like what does that bring to your mind?
Like someone heard somebody shooting cans in their backyard or something.
Correct. And maybe they were like making a shit ton of noise or something, and it was like getting a little late.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that is a firearm.
Essentially a noise complaint.
Yeah, basically.
Or maybe I saw my neighbor with a firearm, wielding it in his front yard unsafely, and I'm concerned.
Right.
That would be a firearms complaint, not there's people laying dead all over a neighborhood and there's buildings on fire. This place is a freaking war zone.
Yeah.
That is not a firearms complaint.
And it was probably done by a suspected RCMP officer.
Correct.
Right.
So again, we'll just go back. Was it? We went through it. So the survivor of that original massacre, he tells the cops, I assume he knows who Wortman is because they're all neighbors.
Yeah.
He knows who Wortman is. He told them who he was and that he was traveling in an RCMP cruiser.
And dressed as an officer.
And dressed as one.
Yeah.
And the cops did not do a damn thing about it. They never said a thing. They just carried on and said, we have a firearms complaint.
And not only that, this tweet, not only did it, was the contents of the tweet ridiculous.
Disingenuous, actually. It's borderline like fraudulent, really is what it is.
It came 90 minutes after the first 911 call. So it's not even just what the contents are, but the amount of time that it took for them to
just do that,
to even say one thing about what was going on.
That's right. That's right.
Which just seems like an insane misstep.
So if I was to conjecture here, I would say because they got. They knew who Wortman was from the survivor. They knew what he was driving, that they already knew who he was. And for some reason, they didn't want to report this right away because they already either knew how they were going to end this or this was part of some kind of operate. I mean, I don't know that it was some kind of operation, but we're just extrapolating here from their response. Like anywhere else this would have happened in all of Canada or the US, this dude would have been known within the first half an hour.
Yeah.
They would have been all over it. This is a dude. And why would they wait so long? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
But it does make sense if they know exactly who he is and they're under a different set of guidelines when dealing with this particular individual.
I want to do kind of a big reveal of my hypothesis on what this whole situation was and what it was motivated by.
Yeah,
but we'll get
definitely,
there.
definitely.
Approximately. Okay, so
he stayed all night.
So he goes
now.
to Debert,
Yeah.
which is a kind of a small town.
Just 20 clicks or 26 kilometers or something
away from the initial scene.
Yeah. Pretty close, actually.
And then Wortman leaves Debert just before the sun rises. So, and this was about 5:43 a.m. the next day on April 19th. Okay, so this is, again, 6 hours. Nothing happens for 6 hours. Nothing
and
happens.
No word from the cops, nothing.
Nothing happens for 6 hours, okay? There's no, like, gunmen at large looking for him. Really bizarre stuff. And again, we don't know we're just two dudes looking at this situation. We don't know.
It's been reported.
Yeah. We
Right.
don't know what the like police policy is in these situations. So I'm not going to speak to that, but I'm just saying.
But we could just easily look at what it's been every other time.
Sure.
And been
or
like,
just use common sense.
or
too.
common sense.
Just like
right?
looking at
when
this is a head scratcher. This one.
Yeah, it really makes no
sense. The decisions
sense.
that were made by the RCMP.
And we're already assuming that because they're part of the state that they're not the most competent that they could be necessarily, right? So
and rural RCMP are notoriously, even less competent than
and maybe it's not even about competency necessarily. Maybe it's just about logistical issues about being a rural cop too, right? Like I'm no defender of cops. I definitely will not defend a cop, but I mean I'm also not willing to attribute to malice what I can attribute to incompetence, I guess, or vice versa. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, 6:29, or no, sorry. I'll go back. 5:43 a.m. He leaves Debert. And the police are fully aware he's still at large. No province-wide alerts. 6:29 a.m. He is seen on video entering the Wentworth area, roughly 60 kilometers north of Portapique. So this takes him about 45 minutes to drive from Debert to Wentworth. He heads to a home on Hunter Road where he kills 2 men and a woman. He remains at the victim's home, quote, for some time, according to the police.
We don't know how they know that. That information's never been shared. Let's just make that clear.
This is just what they're saying.
Yep.
Around the same time, his common-law spouse comes out of hiding and calls 911, telling the police that Wortman assaulted her before the killing rampage, and that he has several firearms and that he is wearing an authentic RCMP uniform and driving a replica RCMP vehicle. And this corroborates what the initial
survivor witness,
So the other weird thing about this case is, one, this is a very specific place to go to.
Yeah.
Like, he went very out of his way. First of all, going to Debert in the first place was very out of his way. And then not saying anything, doing anything.
We should maybe make it clear that the place that he holed up for the night was a some kind of shop, a welding shop or something.
Yeah, it was in like an industrial area.
Yeah, but he knew obviously how to access that area and how to stay hidden. So
and hid a police vehicle.
Yeah,
a police cruiser.
Exactly. And again, it's 26 kilometers. That is not far. So in Canadianese, I mean. 20 kilometers of travel, that's about 15 minutes on the highway.
Yeah.
It's nothing.
Yeah. but
60 kilometers is about 35 minutes.
It's just strange. Everything is so specific.
Very
it's not
specific.
random.
No, this is not random. No.
There's nothing random about the behavior.
He went to a safe house he had set up already that he knew he'd be good at.
Yeah.
And then he carried on to this poor couple's house. And then, so what was it that we found out about these people?
So, okay. The victims, I have their names down here somewhere. The victims were a couple who, they were corrections officers. They worked in,
women's and men's.
The man worked in the men's penitentiary, and the woman worked in I don't know if that's the right word, but in a jail. They were both jail officers, and he went there and specifically to this house and killed them. Now, the very, very odd thing about this couple is the man is a cousin to Peter Griffin, the neighbor / friend
/ gangster.
Yeah, / organized crime, connected to drug cartels, happened to be, just oddly enough, happened to have a connection. And now you got to remember, a lot of the killings did have a connection, and the killings that don't have an obvious connection seem to me to be witnesses.
I think they're very easily explained as he was just...
They were in the wrong place.
They saw him, and so he just killed them in cold blood to cover his tracks.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost like he thought he was going to get away with all this, which is very strange.
That's a point I want to bring up later too.
Sure.
Is I think he believed that
there was some kind of plan here.
Yeah, there was a getaway plan, right? There's an escape plan. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, and then another odd quirk about this whole story is Wortman's girlfriend, Lisa Banfield, comes out of hiding right around this time. Again, why did she, it seems awfully coincidental. And also another question is, why didn't he kill Lisa if he was just on a murderous rampage and he's killing all the other witnesses, but this one witness he decides not to kill?
Yeah, typically in a crime of passion rampage, when they do happen, it's not very often, but when it does happen, the significant other or the spouse of that person is the very first to go, and then next are the children. It's a horrible thing to consider, but that is what happens, and there is no way that those people get away. So the whole story about her being put in restraints and then beaten, that just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense to me
with the rest of this whole rampage. There's just no that's just not fitting of the rest of it. So it seems very odd. I mean, again, we don't know, we're just speculating there, but just thinking about it for 2 seconds, you go, well, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait till we get into whose house she went to actually when she first came out of the woods.
Yeah.
You remember that?
We'll get into that too. So 8:02 a.m., the RCMP make a second announcement on Twitter stating that the Portapique situation involves an active shooter, upgraded from the previous shooting complaint that was tweeted out the night before. Now remember, this was another tweet. This was a social media post.
Unbelievable.
And you got to remember, this is rural Nova Scotia. Portapique is known as a retirement community. Yeah. Okay. I don't think these people are using Twitter. I'm sorry.
And they should be fairly certain that he's not in Portapique anymore.
Yeah.
By this time, the amount of attention from the RCs that town would have gathered would have made it absolutely sure that he wasn't there. But there was no mention about it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So
again, this tweet again disingenuously makes it seem like it still has to do within the area of Portapique.
Yeah.
Well, 60 kilometers out from Portapique is not in the area.
Yeah. 8:54 a.m., the RCMP released a photo of Wortman on Twitter, and saying, quote, "The shooter is armed and dangerous."
Finally, we get something from them. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, again, another over 50 minutes after the last tweet.
Once they realize the shit's really starting to hit the fan, and the word's already probably getting out, which we've actually been actively trying to find the original tweets from people in the town and stuff, and social media posts to see if we could get a better timeline. Although we're still looking into that. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, 9:43 a.m. The gunman is spotted at Highway 4 and Highway 426. He kills a woman who is walking along the highway in Wentworth Valley area.
Again, it seems random. However, we have no idea of that situation of that killing.
Yeah.
Again, as you said, and I would agree, I highly suspect that they had some kind of interaction where he either knew her or she knew him, recognized him, maybe even seen it on social media at that time. Yeah. And he dealt with that loose end.
Yeah, exactly.
As horribly as he did.
Yeah. 9:48 a.m. Police say the gunman arrived south to a home on Highway 4 in the Glenholm area. The residents call 911 saying they know the shooter. They do not answer the door, and he eventually leaves. So again these people know him. Yeah.
So
we don't know what the connection is.
Yeah, we don't know the connection. So first off, the first massacre, 13 people, all his neighbors. Yeah. All people that he knows.
Yeah.
Every other killing, the other killing was people that could be tertiarily related to him because they're acquainted, they're relatives of people he already deals with. Third, this woman who sees, obviously, assumedly, I guess, not obviously, but we assume had some interaction with him, witnessed him dead. And then this next killing is people who, it wasn't a killing, but it was people who knew him and didn't answer the door and called 911. Yeah. By the way, where were the cops? Like, how far away were they to respond to that? Anyways.
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
9:57 a.m. Video captures the gunman driving east into Burt. 10:04 a.m. RCMP tweet that people should avoid Highway 4 in Glenholm as the gunman is in that area. 10:08, 4 minutes later, Wortman arrives back into DeBert. He pulls over a car and kills the driver. He continues along Highway 4 and does the same to a second driver. Again, this seems random. I'm not so sure it is.
I think the first one was definitely just acquiring another vehicle. Is that what he was doing?
Well,
no,
I don't believe
it doesn't say that.
Again,
so it's possible he recognized these people,
or he was looking for them,
and knew where they were going. Anyways,
yeah,
that's pure speculation. We do not know that.
Yeah, we don't know. Approximately 10:16 a.m., the gunman is captured on video passing through Truro. He takes Highway 2 to Millbrook. 10:17 a.m., police share publicly for the first time, 12 hours later, via Twitter, that the gunman may be driving a vehicle that looks like an RCMP cruiser and wearing what appears to be, quote, an RCMP uniform.
Unbelievable. So this man's been able to run roughshod over the community, mostly unarmed community, by the way, and have his way with them while in the guise of people who are allegedly there to protect them. Yeah. So, yeah, horrible.
10:25 a.m., the assailant stops at the Millbrook fire station, gets out of the vehicle, removes his jacket, and puts on a reflective vest, then continues south on Highway 2 through Hilden. The statement by the RCMP conflicts with video surveillance from the McMaggie trading post, which filmed Wortman getting out of the police cruiser with a timestamp of 10:55 a.m. And changing into a reflective vest.
So we have a 30-minute discrepancy there.
Yeah,
essentially.
A different place and a different time from when he got out of his cruiser and changed his vest.
Interesting.
Yeah. Again, I don't know what to chalk that up to. It just seems to be a discrepancy.
Yeah.
10:32 a.m. The killer is seen on a video taken at a Brookfield Esso station. And then 10:49 a.m. Police say RCMP Constable Heidi Stevenson and Constable Chad Morrison were working during this time in Enfield. The gunman pulls up alongside and shoots Morrison, who is waiting to meet up with Stevenson, but he is not shot fatally. Wortman continues on. He heads south on Highway 2 and collides head-on with Stevenson on her way to meet Morrison. He gets out of the vehicle and fatally shoots Stevenson and takes her weapon. A bystander believed to be Joey Weber arrives to help, but is killed by the gunman. The gunman takes Weber's silver SUV.
Does that sound like the actions of someone who's obsessed with being a police officer or obsessed with cops?
Yeah.
That does not sound like somebody who likes cops very much.
Yeah.
I mean, and I only say that because if you go back into the articles, you'll find that that is what's being claimed by our corporate media, is that this guy was some kind of weird COVID doomsday prepper / cop lover.
Yeah.
And he clearly has no love for cops.
Yeah. And we'll get more into that too as well later. Do you want to do the next one?
Sure. The 1032.
No.
Oh, sorry. 1106. The RCMP tweet, the gunman is traveling south on Highway 102 from Brookfield. He arrives at the home of a female acquaintance believed to be Gina Goulet. He kills her and leaves, driving her Mazda 3.
Yeah, again, so very specific place to go. He knows her.
He already knows her. Very sad. Steals her vehicle.
This is his third vehicle that he'll be using. And he's also, as far as we know, he's wearing a reflective vest and not I don't know if that's a police reflective vest or if it's just like a construction.
They look almost... They're nearly identical.
I think so, but usually they'll say on the back if it's a police one.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Okay. I just from what my own experience seeing them on the road. So at 11:23, driving south on Highway 102, the gunman stops at the Irving Big Stop gas station in Enfield, about 100 kilometers south of Portapique, to refuel. And at 11:26. This detail really strikes me as odd. Through happenstance, which means coincidence, which means a bolt of lightning has struck, the RCMP tactical officers arrive at the same gas station as Wortman. There was a brief encounter with the gunman, and he was shot dead at the scene. Now that is, I mean, it's just, there's so many places... the cops could have been with a TAC team, and for them to be there at that exact time, that exact place, that's just so highly unlikely. It's highly, highly unlikely that they didn't know he was going to be there or weren't tipped off, although we don't know because they won't share any information.
Yeah. So I mean, we could just chalk it up like police at this point were probably all over the place.
Right.
Looking for
and they were stopping to use the bathroom or get a water or whatever. Yeah. But I just think it's very odd that the team that would have probably put him down.
Yeah, like a tactical
team. The probably only tactical team that they have just happened to roll up on him there. That's just a very, very odd coincidence. And I don't think it is a coincidence personally, but that's just me.
Yeah, so I have like a bunch of further notes too on all this, a lot of just weird things. We already briefly discussed Peter Griffin, who was the cousin of Sean McLeod, which was so right after Wortman's first massacre. He hides in DeBert for 6 hours, then leaves, then goes straight to Sean McLeod's house and kills Sean McLeod, who is a corrections officer, and his wife. And he also kills Sean McLeod's neighbor, who came to investigate the fire that Wortman had
started. So there's a few weird things with this. Do you want to
go for it?
So one, you would have to be IQ deficient to not know how drugs get into our jail system. It does not come through girlfriends baking cakes and putting illegal substances in those cakes and giving it to their husbands or their boyfriends in jail. Doesn't all of it doesn't come from dudes shoving it up their butt and somehow making it through the search, which, by the way, they search your butt when you're admitted to these places. So either or, it falls on the people who are allegedly the guards there. I think you'd be stupid to not understand that a lot of the drugs come from the guards in these situations.
Yeah, they're smuggled in,
or they're at least allowed to pass. The mules are allowed to
turn
pass.
a blind eye.
Correct.
Yeah.
So at the very least, they're turning a blind eye to certain shipments, and at the most, they are involved directly in it.
Yeah.
That is very common knowledge. It's not really. We have safe injection sites inside prisons here in Canada. Like, there's absolutely no doubt about it. The prisoners are not doing it themselves. Their loved ones are not getting it all that much in for them to have those things provided for them. So there's just no.
So the question is, did Sean McLeod, because of his proximity to his cousin, who was convicted in 2014 of owning illegal weapons and smuggling drugs.
Yeah.
The question is should we be suspicious that McLeod was somehow connected to organized crime as well and bringing drugs in? And did that make him some kind of target? Or perhaps he wasn't doing it. Maybe he was resisting organized crime, and that's why he became a target. I don't know.
Very possible.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Either way.
Yeah, either way.
I would lean more towards that if the couple was both involved in it, specifically at different jail sites.
Yeah,
I would assume that they were involved somehow.
Oh yeah, it makes a perfect.
It makes a lot more sense than anything else. And then this poor neighbor. So, another detail that was shared, we don't know how they know this, but allegedly Wortman spent a few hours at this couple's house, which
is odd.
Very
Super odd.
So to me, it means that he's looking for something.
Yeah. That's what I thought too.
If he didn't murder them first, maybe he didn't murder them first, maybe they had maybe they had breakfast and he was like a total psychopath about it, and then just after breakfast, after they fed him, he killed them and then burned it all down.
Yeah.
We don't know, but I would imagine that the killings happened first, and also, he searched the property.
And on the note of burning stuff down, it is clear to me that he was burning evidence.
Oh, absolutely.
He burned down his own house.
Yeah.
And burned a bunch of evidence, which also, by the way, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, had 3 more mock-up police cruisers in his garage.
At least two, for sure.
Yeah, at least 2 more. And he burned down his own house, which had like a number of computers and hard drives and that kind of stuff that would have been evidence. So and then he burned down the houses of his victims with his victims' bodies still inside. So to me, this isn't like random arson, and that's what it was so weird when I was initially. I don't know if you remember when you initially heard the story. I like when they reported it as a man dressed as an RCMP officer in a police cruiser, killing people and burning down houses like for 13 hours. My initial reaction,
just like that is, you guys are either fucking like full of shit, or this is like,
it made no sense.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Yeah. Like absolutely no sense. Like, would this dude have like a fucking grenade launcher and a helicopter? Like, what's going on here, guys?
Immediately, my eyebrow raised, right? And I'm like, there's more to this. There's more to this.
Much more.
There cannot be. That cannot just be the explanation. And so that brings us up to the question of motivation. So a lot of what is talked about, and a lot of the sort of narrative, is one, Wortman was an abusive alcoholic who just snapped and had a history of violence and then went on a rampage.
A somehow well planned, well thought out.
So if you look at if you look at the MO of mass shooters, okay, they're generally done in one area, in one spot. They're generally targeting some kind of specific people group or tribe or something like that. So if you think about the New Zealand shooter that was at 2 mosques,
Right.
If you think about like
Which that whole
Columbine,
thing, we should do a deep dive on that because that's a weird one too. But
sure,
almost as bad as this one.
for sure. But that one at least it fit the MO of a mass
Correct.
shooter.
It definitely did. Yeah.
But Columbine was like school, like
Yeah.
these 2 kids were getting bullied, so they shoot up their school, right?
It's revenge on the other.
Yeah,
Right.
Dylan Roof attacked a black church, and he clearly had racist sentiments. And so there's sort of this MO, and the vast majority of these shooters also release some kind of manifesto prior to their carrying out their actions.
They have to let the world know how upset they are with
right.
it.
And but you have to also think about what they're trying to do. It's a PR stunt is what it is.
Of course.
They're trying to send a message to people, and they want people to hear what they have to say.
And almost join in their cause as like or respect what they've done somehow, right?
And so there's like an ideological motivation to a lot of these mass shooting events. There was none of that in this.
Which is just that to me is very, very disturbing.
Yeah,
is just
this was not the typical like mass shooter event that we think it was. You know, people, the RCMP have been trying to spin the story that Wortman was like obsessed with police, and again, his girlfriend Lisa Banfield contradicts the statement by saying she said to the media at one point that he doesn't like the police and he thinks he's better than the police.
Yeah.
That was her specific statement.
Which could classic psychopath, right?
He could be obsessed with the police. I don't know.
In a different way, though. Not obsessed with like being one of them, but obsessed with how shitty they are.
Yeah,
so he's better than them.
So how this has been propagated, this sort of narrative, is that there was this yearbook of Wortman from high school, and it said Wortman will probably be a RCMP officer.
Didn't he write that in there?
Himself? No, I don't know if it's where like people write stuff about you.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And that's where it was from. And this whole like story has been spun about.
He's obsessed with he's just obsessed with us. He just wants to be one of us.
I mean, yeah, like the vehicles that people knew that he had. Yeah. I guess that
we actually found news footage of one of his what we would consider to be a ghost car or a ghost SUV. Was a old RCMP vehicle bought at an auction, and we came across this footage because Wortman, we're not painting him in a good light. He's an evil, horrible bastard, and I hope that he burns. But he was featured in the local news. I believe it was CTV in the area where his denturist clinic was, and he gave this poor woman who had suffered from her cancer treatment and lost all her teeth, and he had given her brand new set of dentures free of charge. But his vehicle, his unmarked police SUV, was pictured in that.
Right.
In that, and you guys can go and look that up on YouTube. It's very easy to find.
Yeah, it's very. That is odd, but again, we're gonna get to this sort of. What our sort of hypothesis is. Yeah. And so that the motivation doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. The RCMP have also been spinning it's in the middle of a pandemic narrative, which I think
he's some kind of prepper.
Yeah, he's a prepper. and that's like what he
it's ridiculous.
It's like there's no evidence. Somebody said I think he was stockpiling fuel.
Yeah,
it's like one of the
and no evidence of that, by the way. That's been released. There could be, but we haven't seen it or been able to gather it.
Right, and that is just like the severe lack of evidence for that hypothesis. It seems irresponsible to be reporting that. It's irresponsible. It really is.
If we could get it into the ethics, I mean. The case is closed. He's dead.
Right.
All this information should be out there for the public to know.
Yeah.
Like we should know every single little detail. We should have access to every single piece of paperwork, every report made about it, from all of these people about this.
Yeah.
There's nothing. We can't even get an inquiry into it.
Yeah.
So anyways, Let's keep going. We'll just ran forever.
And so, so that hypothesis on that motive, doesn't make any sense.
No.
Is there any other hypothesis that there? I think those are like the main ones. One is crime of passion, had a fight with his girlfriend, and then
and it just randomly murdered people,
but
that were all clearly targeted weirdly.
There's also been some reports that he had some kind of kill list or a list
possible
a list of people,
that's
which
possible.
Again would
fair enough.
But that would lead into my hypothesis of what was really happening.
But that's still more of a planned thing.
So
right?
the other hypothesis is like he was obsessed with police and he wanted to like make a statement, do this mass shooter thing. Another hypothesis is that his business fell apart because of COVID-19 and he was financially in shambles, which is totally not true. There's no evidence that he had any trouble financially.
I haven't seen that.
He seemed to be very liquid with cash.
Yeah, it seems like he's actually quite well off.
Yeah, and had quite a number of properties and assets. So like even if your business goes through a rough time, like with the amount of assets that he
or
had
even just
available.
Credit available to you.
Yeah, exactly.
You can float that.
I'm highly
It makes no sense.
That is not a that doesn't seem like a plausible hypothesis. But another hypothesis, and this has been floated around by the Maclean's article writer, Paul Palango, but I think he doesn't even go quite far enough. But he wrote an incredible piece called.
He's a respectable journalist.
Yeah.
We're not respectable, so we can go as far as we want with this.
Exactly. So he wrote a really good piece that I highly recommend everyone reads. It's called "The Nova Scotia Shooter Case Has Hallmarks of an Undercover Operation." That's linked in our. In the document that we made, and you can just Google it. It's on Maclean's, which is a pretty well-respected mainstream publishing.
It's very leftist, but it's a really good
center left.
Center left. Yeah.
But they do have, and I will say, like all of these mainstream corporate media entities, they all have decent individual reporters.
Yeah,
it's not to malign
that's a good point.
Every single one of them, but just the editorial decisions and the editorializing in general is pretty bad.
Yeah, it's definitely about finding the individual journalist who is actually putting out good stuff or is being allowed to put out decent stuff.
Totally.
Once you get on their train, then you can actually really figure some stuff out.
Yeah, exactly.
And these guys over at Maclean's who are doing a deep dive into this, I wouldn't even argue for really all the right reasons, but as they've made clear in some of their other articles, but it's still been really good, really eye-opening.
Guys, thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you're enjoying it, please go like and subscribe on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can also leave me a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. And also, if you want to support the show in any way, make sure to go to patreon.com/The Peaceful Way. I also have a PayPal. You can email at thepeacefulwaypodcast@gmail.com. Thanks. Enjoy the rest of this episode. Yeah, but just the information they've uncovered
exactly
is very good. So again, we brought up before the whole way he procured the amount of money that he did, the $475,000. This was nearly 3 weeks prior to the shooting, and his connections to organized crime. The what seemed to be targeted victims.
Or loose end tie-ups.
The tying up loose ends, the destruction of evidence.
Yeah.
This, to me, this is my again, I'm not saying that I could be proven wrong, but this, to me, my hypothesis is that this was a mafia hit job gone wrong.
Yeah, definitely. I would totally agree. This was a lot more business than it was passion. These were business killings. They were not. Maybe, you know what? I could argue that his uncle, the house that his uncle sold, and the lady who bought that, I could almost argue that was just a fuck you.
It could have been
on the way.
It could have been. However, if his uncle is involved too, because his uncle could be involved, and his uncle was trying to keep this property from. So this woman who bought the house could have been involved. We don't know. We don't know. Yeah, we don't know. I'm just saying there's plausible explanations,
and maybe even involved, but not involved in anything illegal. Maybe just tertiarily, knew somebody and
like doing favors for people. Or all above the board.
Or whatever.
Yeah,
we don't know.
Another, so we have all this evidence that Wortman was some kind of confidential informant, or so what
he acts like one, anyways.
Yeah, what I found out is actually there's two classifications. There's a confidential informant, and there is like I
think it was an agent.
An agent, yeah.
Yes.
Agent, and so, not to be confused with like an actual RCMP officer. They're not like a deputized RCMP officer who's gone through police academy or anything like that.
But they could be.
They could be, but not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Correct. They could just be whoever.
The RCMP have been known to take citizens, and it's basically they have an ongoing sort of relationship with the RCMP to run operations for them and
that they couldn't do.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, without being found out.
So also like Wortman's bully tactics in the past that he's done. It's like the
very mafia.
This is so
organized.
Mafia,
yeah, just a shakedown dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's willing to just do violence at the drop of a hat just because you stand too close to his property.
Yeah,
or you don't want to pay the amount that he's asking you for weed.
Yeah, exactly.
However that
or the kid skimmed some weed off of him.
Or
something like that, right?
Yeah, one of his
Yeah. And it doesn't mean to say that Wortman wasn't a legitimate denturist. He may very well have been. I don't know.
I believe he was. It seems like he was.
He seemed like he was too. And I think he had a lot more cash. The RCMP have been refusing to release how much cash he had, like liquid cash he had. I think he had way more than that 475.
Oh man,
which is like
would just be more damning towards the RCMP.
The RCMP, that's why they're claiming he was a prepper because he had all this cash. It's like no.
That's not how preppers work.
No, well, not only that, but also if you're involved in organized crime, you have like generally will have tons of
liquid.
Yeah, you're gonna have lots of cash. That's like not traceable, right? Yeah. So it to me the evidence seems to be stacking more and more and more in favor of this hypothesis that that this was some kind of organized crime hit job.
Yeah, absolutely.
We haven't been able to determine like all the motivations behind every killing, but it was targeted. This wasn't random. This wasn't a rampage. This does not seem to be some kind of crime of passion. This is very much like he is going after specific people for specific reasons.
Right.
And what those reasons are, who's to say? So I'm going to go back to Lisa Banfield. Now it was almost impossible to find her name.
It was tough. It took a decent amount of sleuthing.
Yeah,
and we randomly stumbled upon it actually.
Well, I found I know we found that one random site, but I actually found like a Nova Scotia government affidavit.
Right.
With
her name on
it. With her name on it, because she was supposed to be the executor of Wortman's estate, which she has since recused herself as the executor.
Right.
But now the question is, Banfield had been with Wortman for years, and she, if Wortman was involved in organized crime, she must have been privy to this knowledge, if not involved herself.
Yeah.
And the weird thing about her coming out at the same time as Wortman arrives at McLeod's place and kills him is just too strange. The fact that he didn't kill her, and the fact, she apparently was handcuffed and bound,
restrained.
and escape. Now, Wortman may have hit her a few times to make it look like she had been assaulted by as an alibi, right?
Of course, yeah.
Like they could have easily set that up. Yeah. But my suspicion, again, this is conjecture, but my suspicion is that somehow Banfield was involved, and then perhaps something went wrong at McLeod's house, and then he told her to come out of hiding, and they had some kind of plan B.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
they had a plan B that she could get out of it and be disconnected from it.
Right, exactly. And again, it doesn't make sense that she would hide for 6 hours, in my opinion.
Maybe it does. I don't know. She wouldn't know. If it was real, she wouldn't know if he was still around or what was going on. Or
it's true.
Although there would be a lot of police presence around.
Yeah, I know.
There.
She would know that there's like lots of police presence by then. I'm not saying it's not out of the realm of possibility. I'm just a little
seems
skeptical.
highly unlikely.
That so going to like what exactly happened.
So
when
what
Banfield
exactly happened is. She knocked on the door of the only surviving neighbor of this slaughter, or one of the only surviving neighbors. He was not involved. He wasn't hurt. He actually had no idea what had happened. He's a sort of a more old-fashioned type of fellow, lives by himself. I believe he said he has a couple dogs or a couple cats. It's linked in the McLean's article. Anyways, So he shuts his phone off when he goes to sleep because he's old-fashioned like that. And he tells the McLean article contributors that he woke up at around 2 or 3 to use the washroom, and he happened to turn his phone on, and his phone was blowing up with a bunch of text messages and missed calls from friends and family. Asking if you're okay, what's going on, like are you safe, et cetera, et cetera. He gets a little freaked out. Apparently he doesn't call anyone back or doesn't state that he does. He just decides to hop in his truck and go for a cruise around the neighborhood because of the amount of calls he's got to see what's going on. As he cruises down his street, there's an RC cruiser parked across the entire road. He rolls up to them slowly, and they speak to him through their loudspeaker to just move on and to not approach the vehicle. And he thought that was strange because what's going on? Don't you want to know who I am and where I'm coming from and where I'm going? Cops had no interest in him, and he moved on. Now, this is in the middle of the night when Wortman probably would have been at the shop 26 kilometers away, hiding out for the night. So very odd behavior by the RCMP, according to this guy. He drove around. He actually then noticed that a bunch of his neighbors' properties were burnt to the ground, and just very odd. I guess he didn't really sleep the rest of that night. And then around 6 a.m. that morning, Wortman's spouse came knocking on his door, and that's where we get this report from her. That's where she called the cops. Again, the police rolled up. They whisked Lisa Banfield away and had nothing to say to the neighbor. Had no questions to ask them.
He didn't even have to fill out a statement.
No statements. They just left.
Yeah.
Now that could have been partially due to the frantic nature of the case and what was going on, but it's very odd that you wouldn't question that individual or leave someone
or even
behind.
At a later time ask him to make a statement. And I believe the story was done like quite a while after.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So up to that point, he hadn't made any kind of statement to the police, right?
Yeah.
So again, very, very odd circumstances.
Very strange. Very strange. Makes no sense.
Yeah.
The fact that he drove by unmolested with cops there who wouldn't talk to him or do anything. It's just like they already knew what was going on. They knew he wasn't involved, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, never let anybody know.
Yeah.
Did not let the public know.
Yeah. There's a lot of strange, really odd sort of circumstances. And it's not that there wouldn't be odd circumstances, you know, like I am open to like just things that aren't that explainable or don't make a lot of sense or odd coincidences, but it's just the sheer amount of odd coincidences. And also, and one more thing I wanted to add is the weapons that Wortman had on his person. So apparently he had some kind of shotgun, some kind of AR rifle, and a couple of handguns, and he also took Heidi Stevenson's handgun after he killed her. The RCMP haven't specified exactly what the weapons were. All I've been able to gather is that it was some kind of shotgun and some kind of AR.
Yeah, some kind of rifle.
Yeah, some kind of rifle. And but the police, all they've said about them, that they were illegal weapons from the United States that were smuggled into the U.S.
Which again, absolutely. How would they know that? And two, where's the proof of that?
Well, yeah, they would know that because they were
the ones smuggling them,
or they I don't know,
were involved with
they
it.
took the guns from him right after they killed him. They would have gathered all his weapons, but they're not releasing exactly what kind of weapons they were.
Yeah.
And this goes, but also going back to his connection to Peter Griffin, who had previously had charges on smuggling guns.
Right.
That this just like adds more fuel to that fire that he was connected somehow to organized crime, because he was able to get his hand. It's not that it's impossible to get.
No, but it's not that easy.
Yeah,
you got to know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy.
Exactly. You got to know the right people to get your hands on these kind of illegal weapons, right?
For sure.
And so again, that I'm like, all the evidence seems to point to this guy was involved in organized crime, either the Hells Angels, perhaps Mexican drug cartels, I don't know. And that's how he was able to procure all these weapons and get these mock-up police cruisers and so forth, and these RCMP uniforms.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there's all this evidence that seems to point, and the only people who have raised the alarm about this was the Maclean's article writer, which again, I highly recommend that people go and read. They're the only ones asking any questions about this. And one more point I want to bring up is, so the officer who served the RCMP's first search warrants was Sergeant Angela Howrlick, a 28-year veteran of the RCMP. Howrlick stipulated in the documents that she is experienced in outlaw biker gangs, drug trafficking, and confidential informant. So why was she
the first?
The first one serving warrants on all his properties and whatnot.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and that's sort of, I think, what initially raised the alarm bells, is why is this specific officer who specializes in organized crime and confidential informants on this case. But since then the police chief Campbell has just denied that that Wortman had any connection to
Superintendent Campbell,
or superintendent, whatever. Yeah, whatever they call them.
Yeah, whatever they call these people.
Yeah, but so yeah, there's just so many questions, so many things that just looking at the totality of the evidence that we actually have. And
the alleged evidence.
Yeah.
Because again, you and I as third-party observers from just the articles that we've sourced and read, we don't actually know firsthand these things. But
for sure,
I think that we could probably surmise that it's pretty close to what they're reporting, especially the Maclean's guys, because they've alleged quite a few things that could put them at risk for some pretty bad political and not corporate, but what's the other word? Professional consequences. Right. So,
yeah.
I wouldn't put my life on the line saying that, why did Wortman pull out $475,000 exactly like a police informant did, unless I absolutely knew that is what.
Well, so I know one more note on the police informant thing. From the sources, apparently police informants, it's very rare that they would even get over $10,000 in one payment. But if you're an agent, it's very common that you would get a much higher payout.
So to me, an agent is like a facilitator of actual,
For sure,
things going on.
Yeah.
Actual transactions. The
Yeah.
agent is there. So
And it could have been a situation where Wortman double-crossed the police.
oh,
right?
absolutely,
And
or double crossed everybody.
yeah,
Who knows?
double-cross.
Like just real.
He just
crazy
went.
shit.
He went a total Heisenberg on them. You know.
yeah, absolutely.
and tried to like beat out everyone. That very well could have been the case. I don't know, but it brings up like so many questions, and so many concerns, and now our prime minister brought in sort of like he rushed in this legislation that was on the back burner for quite a while to ban
all these weapons.
1,200 different types of weapons, I believe.
Yeah.
And apparently, the RCMP have already stated all the weapons that Wortman used were already banned.
Right.
And so this gun ban that Trudeau is bringing in wouldn't have done anything to prevent this from happening.
It just would have restricted innocent people's rights to defend themselves more.
And so that's what I want to talk to you about. So this podcast is a podcast about peace and nonviolence, and we're trying to reduce violence, right? And bring more peace. And I know a lot of peace activists are pacifists,
right?
And I would consider myself there. A lot of people misunderstand pacifism,
right?
They
lots
think
of pacifists misunderstand pacifism as well,
true,
which is my frustration with people who take on that moniker. But continue.
Yeah, there are multiple sort of types of pacifism. Just like there's multiple types of socialists or capitalists.
Yeah,
right?
and libertarian. Everything. Yeah,
precisely. So I would consider myself to probably be in the anti-war pacifist camp.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm becoming more and more convinced the more history I read that there are very few, if not any, wars that are morally right. And even if you were to use, say, like Constantine or Augustine's just war theory, even if you use that standard, there's almost not one war
that is just
in history that even reaches that standard.
No,
right?
Not even close.
Yeah, so it's so I'd probably consider myself in the camp of a anti-war pacifist.
Yeah.
However,
does that mean
there's also pure pacifists, right? Who don't believe they should ever use violence in any circumstance and won't, even if, let's say, I think pacifists always probably get hurled with this scenario where there's a madman who's just shooting people at random. What do? And you have the ability to stop him.
Yeah.
Do you stop it? Do you use violence to stop him? And I think that's a good question for to ask now that we're kind of getting it.
That is the answer that is the question I've asked many pacifists.
Yeah.
And it's usually quite lacking.
And why do you say that?
I find it lacking is because they say no, they wouldn't stop it. Essentially, is that they have no right. Mostly, I deal with Christian pacifists, so they would, which there's most pacifists are actually Christian pacifists.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah.
Like there's, I would say 2/3 of the market for pacifism are Christian pacifists.
Yeah,
and I understand that argument. I think I do, and I also don't like. There's something really great about just seeing and empathizing with someone else's point of view, even if you'll never agree with it.
Yeah,
because you can always pull something great out of it. Like you can always see there's always some grain of truth around something that somebody believes, even if they don't believe it. So I've tried my best to talk with those people and stuff, and they're great people. Actually, most pacifists I've talked to, we agree on 99% of everything, except for this one thing. And
is there justified use of violence?
Yes,
right?
and there is a justified use of violence. It's to protect you, and your family.
Yeah.
Now, so there's this weird game that I found with the guys I've talked to. Maybe they're not good pacifists. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they've expressed that it's just like it's just clear across the board. Like they just won't use violence, right? they'll basically allow themselves to be killed and their family
Yeah.
or whatever, because they don't have the right to use violence. And again, I understand that, but I think that's antithetical to peace. If you don't stop if you don't stop the predator or the tyrant when he comes knocking on your door, then you're no more peaceful than he is. You're actually, if you're to become a victim of his or a victim of the predator, then you're just one more victim. You haven't done anything. Your peaceful stance,
I think my biggest
makes
question
sense.
is if you could hypothetically reduce the violence, right? So if
Oh, yes.
neutralizing that threat
Correct.
reduces the violence, if somebody had a weapon on them in the Gabriel Wortman situation and they
ended
were
it.
able to neutralize him, how many more people would have survived?
Correct.
How many less people would have been, traumatized
Right.
and had their lives destroyed? Like some of the victims, they had young children, right?
Yeah.
And they have to grow up without their parents, and so that's sort of the question.
There is a balance.
Yeah,
Sure.
there is a question that there is in certain applications and certain contexts, violence can actually reduce violence.
or at least the threat of violent resistance
Yeah.
can reduce
Yeah,
violence, right? It's not even like
exactly
necessarily
yeah.
violence, right?
And that's the question, right? Is like when we look at the home invasion statistics in, say, Texas, which has like defend your castle laws.
Yeah.
They're very low.
Yeah, of course.
Because nobody is going to risk going into a home and get shot because gun ownership is very high.
That's right.
And
Actually, home invasions are kind of a weird thing too, though. Before we get too on that, is most home invasions are done with people who are all affiliated with one another and who are all already connected. It's essentially one drug dealer raiding another drug dealer
okay.
is
Yeah.
most home invasions, and then it's
Interesting.
and then it's also one drug dealer getting the wrong house and raiding completely innocent people.
Yeah.
And so if you actually look, like I know here where we live,
yeah.
all of our home invasions are all involved with organized crime. There is no such thing as like someone who so that person is like innocent as far as their home is being invaded, but they
Right.
are involved with these people
Gotcha.
So let's not, but yes, you're like,
I didn't realize that actually.
yeah. So, and even then, like the fact that the people's homes that you're raiding might have guns still isn't enough even.
Yeah.
Sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of, I guess it's like antithetical to what we're trying to explain, but not really.
No, but still, I think the point stands. Like it is.
It is. Yeah.
You're like, if there's a reasonable danger to you as the perpetrator, you're going to be disincentivized to engage in certain kinds of behavior.
Yes,
right?
of course.
And so, and I think that there's sort of the there's this old cliche. It's like, an armed society makes nice neighbors or polite
Is a
neighbors.
polite society.
Yeah,
correct.
an armed
Yes.
society is a polite society,
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And and this is again where I even depart from like my political tribe a little bit, is the question of nuclear proliferation.
Right.
I'm actually at this point in our history, I'm actually not in favor of nuclear disarmament. I'm not necessarily for building more.
Yeah.
But for the time being, because enough.
I think there's enough to go around for everyone.
Yeah.
I think everybody could have one, and then
Probably.
everybody is more peaceful under mutually assured destruction.
Right. Exactly.
It's absolutely true. Like, why haven't we gone to war with Russia? Well, because they have as many nukes as North America.
And why?
has.
But even India and Pakistan, why haven't
Same.
they engaged in a nuclear war?
And they
right?
constantly skirmish against each other, but
all the time.
they never will launch the nuke.
Yeah.
North Korea, they'll never launch that nuke. They're using
China as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
China too. They will never use these things until the point that they're forced to, if they ever have to. And we can say whatever we want about those totalitarian regimes. They're just as totalitarian as ours.
Yeah.
And they're terrible.
Or worse.
Yeah, or no, they're probably definitely worse, I guess. I live in way more freedom than someone in North Korea.
Sure.
But they also understand the consequences of nuking the earth. Like, they're not retarded.
Yeah.
They absolutely know what would happen.
Yeah.
If somebody actually did it, they're fully aware of the consequences. Like, they're aware they would be nuked immediately. Like, their entire country would be nothing. It would just be rubble. And then whoever they hit would be rubble, and the earth would go into, like, it's
Totally.
just a zero-sum game. Nobody wins. Everyone's killed.
Yeah.
It's bad.
And
it makes actually more peace.
Yeah,
which is the crazy thing.
It's sort of a paradox, right? Like,
Correct.
a dangerous society is actually a peaceful society, right?
Yes.
Like, if the levers of violent power are sort of equally distributed amongst enough people,
it's less
either
likely
within
to
it.
be used.
Yeah, it's actually there's a lot less likelihood statistically, and that's where I think, like, a lot of peace activists and nonviolent activists sort of, and I appreciate nonviolent activism, nonviolent resistance. I think
it's the best way.
Totally.
We can't. It's hard saying this, and I hope you don't get, like, struck from the internet for this, but as a boog boy myself, a big igloo boy, I think that the non-violent way to go is the absolute best way to go. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But you need to show that you will do what it takes if you are forced to do that. Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, it's a weird place in humanity where that needs to be rediscovered, because I feel like that's always been known throughout mankind.
Yeah, totally.
Except in this last, like, probably extremely civilized-ish past like 300-400 years of our civilization, where it's like, oh, now we need to remind each other that we're willing to do what we need to do in case you step out of line against me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a yeah.
Totally.
Anyway, it's a strange.
Yeah,
and then we just give the government all our power and all our guns, and then we pretend like they'll protect us from fucking psychopath assholes like Wortman, and then they don't.
And that's sort of the paradox of this whole thing. If there was actually less gun laws, this probably wouldn't have happened.
I would imagine, it's impossible to know, but I would imagine that his neighbors would have just put him down.
Right, exactly.
Right, the first 13.
I couldn't imagine, like, in rural Georgia, that this would have gone on,
or Montana or something like.
There's just no way, right? Like, it wouldn't have gone on.
He would have been put down, and that would have been that.
And it's not to say, I'm sure people are more armed in rural Nova Scotia than they would be in, like, Halifax.
It doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, it
really does not.
Yeah,
seem
it doesn't
like
seem like nobody seemed to be prepared for it. And it's probably generally a peaceful place, right, where these
I would imagine their neighbor kind of ambushed them.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah,
it's hard to really.
Yeah, and it's not to blame the victims.
Yeah, we're definitely not going to blame them.
but I do think it, and even though I am reticent to, like, promote violence or guns or anything like that, or weapons, there is this paradox that I think peace activists or advocates have to deal with, is that sometimes you got to be a little bit dangerous to keep the peace, right? And
that's the only way.
Yeah,
but that's the fallacy that the state runs on, right? That's why people believe that the state is the only way to have a peaceful society. Is that because it's predicated on violence? I would guess.
Yeah.
Right. When you break it down, a lot of people don't think about it like that. Yeah. They're not like us, but. Really, if they were to think about it, that's what it would be, is that there's a strong man to put somebody down.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, but
really what you're, on that point is, what you're doing is you're outsourcing the violence to somebody else, right? If you're saying, well, I'd rather a police officer do that job for me, it's not, you're implicitly saying that I'm okay with that kind of violence. I just don't want to have to be the one to do it.
I don't want to do the dirty work, of course. Right. And I don't want to kill anybody either. Like,
and fair enough.
Yeah, that is fair. I think that's fair.
But that's sort of the brass tacks of what we're talking about, right? And on the point of gun laws, the sort of internal contradiction of bringing in a gun law is the only way to enforce a gun law is if a group of people with all the guns tell you you're not allowed to have guns, right? And they point guns at you, and say, you know, if you possess this kind of gun,
this property, it's not like it's just an item, it's
right,
just
right,
property,
yeah. If you possess this particular item, then we're gonna point guns at you, strip it from you, and throw you in a cage, right?
That's right.
And there is something that's sort of like the barbarity of it, and
and it's mostly against peaceful people.
Right.
That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not against people like Wortman.
Right, right.
It's not against people who shouldn't have these weapons, right?
Yeah.
But it always seems to be against people who are not doing anything wrong.
Right.
Who haven't threatened anyone, who haven't done anything. They are the ones, or we are the ones, who are told that we must surrender our property to the government for the betterment of everyone, weirdly.
Yeah.
Even though we're not, nobody else is the problem.
Yeah.
Nobody acting peacefully is the problem.
And you know what? Like, you know what I would even say? If I could make a world where I could just snap my fingers and make all guns disappear, and there was no possible way to make them, and all nuclear weapons disappear, and if I could, and that way, like, everyone's sort of on this equal playing field of like nobody has guns to point at each other, I would probably take that wager. But that's not the world we live in. No. We have to deal with the world with reality.
And I'd rather be shot with a gun than bashed.
Sure.
My head bashed in with a rock.
Sure,
so.
But however, the only thing is just the effectiveness of the efficiency
kill,
you can kill
obviously.
people with, right, with a gun. But there would be much less killing, but much more brutal kinds of killing.
It would be reserved to the most crazy.
Exactly.
Psychos.
Yeah.
Right.
But that would be kind of like my only point. If I could snap my fingers and make the world a completely like gun-free place, that'd be great. But that's not the situation we're in. We're in a situation where there are people who want to hurt you at some point, and they have weapons, and you're on an unequal playing field with them, right? And I think that actually makes an environment for more violence and more danger to you and your family and your community, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And even I want to say it with a lot of nuance too, because I'm not always the biggest fan of like American gun culture, and there is even though people are much more informed about weapons in the U.S., there's also like a lot of irresponsible gun use in the U.S.
Sure.
And there's a lot of like, because it's like a cultural thing, right? So, and the amount, if you look at like the statistics on like gun accidents and stuff, it's like just people being drunk and stupid and shooting guns, right? And
as long as you don't hurt anyone, and it's only yourself.
Well, yeah, but that's the problem. Sometimes they do hurt other people.
The minute you hurt someone else with your stupid actions, that's when you should be responsible for a crime. Yeah. Absolutely.
But that's all I'm saying. I'm not against necessarily guns, but gun culture can be a little irresponsible at times.
Yeah, sure.
And sorry. But it's not to say that there are definitely people who are responsible gun owners.
Oh, tons, yeah.
And
the vast majority, I would say.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
I would say that.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the vast majority of gun owners haven't hurt anybody with their weapons. I would conclude
that's true. Yeah.
From that doesn't mean that every instance obviously was responsible, but like I've been with friends out hunting where the best gun safety wasn't practiced, and they realized it and were like, oh shit, sorry guys, and then corrected it kind of thing, right? And it was no big deal, but it was like, oh man, we could have all been hurt there.
Yeah,
and then we take a little like notice of what we did and we correct it, and then that's that, and we move on, right?
Yeah, totally.
So it's like a gun it's like any tool, any instrument. It's no different than a guitar, a drill, a welding torch. It's just a tool to get somewhere. It does a specific thing. You can use it for peace. You can use it for violence. It doesn't matter. I mean, I could freaking really hurt someone with a guitar if I wanted to.
Right.
I could, like probably kill them. Honestly, right?
Totally.
Definitely, I could with a drill.
Yeah.
So and a torch.
Yeah.
So anyway, regardless,
Yeah, it's true. But
to be honest, I would more prefer a more armed culture with all the firearms. Like I know you're saying if you could snap your fingers, and
okay, you're saying you wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't, because
Okay.
I think that firearms, in that sense, actually make us less brutal
Right.
and more likely to come to voluntary exchange
Yeah.
and cooperation.
Yeah, you're just less incentivized to
hurt one
take
another.
advantage of people because you can. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think it actually makes it for a more peaceful society. So
Maybe.
Maybe.
I'll put I'm not opposed to that necessarily, but I'm not 100% convinced of it.
Yeah.
Like I said, in a fictional world where you could just make them all disappear, would it be better? All things being equal.
yeah.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, but yeah. Anyways, so just as we wrap this up here too, I know that. Yeah, it was really horrible. Our hearts go out to the victims and their families, and I hope that the government and the RCMP tell them the truth. I think they deserve to know the truth.
Can we really just hit on this for a second?
Sure, go for it.
Again, as part of the peaceful way, let's just if we want a more peaceful society, let's look at how the people who say that they are arbiters and protectors of the peace have actually facilitated this violence, as we've laid out.
Yeah,
They have facilitated.
it's true. Yeah,
They have absolutely facilitated these killings. Okay, that's not taking this shit away from Wortman. He did it.
well, I don't know if facilitated. They enabled him.
Enabled, facilitated. To me, they're kind of interchangeable. I mean, the facilitation would be not tweeting when you have 13 dead bodies and bodies and houses burning to the ground.
Yeah.
And you don't really.
But I'm saying they weren't like, as far as we know, they weren't telling him to go shoot.
Oh,
shoot
right.
these people,
And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying facilitating by not doing anything.
Right.
So, and that's not really enabling. Yeah, maybe it could be.
I would say it's enabling.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah,
sure.
They enabled this. They, you know,
they helped it. And
when their job is to protect.
Allegedly,
Yeah.
to protect us and to help us. So these people take our money and then tell us we can't defend ourselves. And then also, when it comes time to defend us, don't defend us.
Yeah.
And enable our deaths. And then when we speak out against it, they come out against us. They wage PR campaigns about how righteous and worthy of worship that they are, right?
And they make thousands of responsible nonviolent gun owners criminals by bringing
tens of thousands, not just thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even into the millions.
Yeah, I don't.
Right?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
we don't actually know, but yeah. So not only are you not allowed to protect yourself, we won't protect you, and also we're gonna restrict even further how you can protect yourself. And so let's just recognize that the state does not bring a more peaceful and safer society. And nothing they do can do that, because it's not possible for them to do that. It's simply impossible.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's do this.
So the RCMP have been dragging their feet on releasing information. There's been one family that's trying to sue the RCMP, and there's another group that are trying to sue Wortman's estate. Finally, there's been appointed a public committee to investigate this, a third-party committee that isn't the RCMP, to investigate this by the government to find out more details about what happened. I'm not super hopeful about it's a panel of 3 people. two of them are former MPs. That's members of parliament. And then one of them is a former higher up in the RCMP. And now they will have more objectivity than just the RCMP straight up investigating themselves.
But this is essentially they are investigating themselves.
And not exactly.
No, I disagree, because this is how in our province, this is how their external investigations work. Okay. And it always comes out in the cops' favor, and it's always X this government employee, X that government employee, X this judge, X this lawyer. All of them worked for the government at one time. Yeah. If you work for the government, you're already compromised in this.
And that's what I was going to bring up. It is 1 degree better than if it was just active.
Sure.
Like the RCMP appointed their own active officers to investigate this. Sure, but there are some people who aren't currently connected with the RCMP. Now, they're politicians, for one.
Yeah, which is a problem.
Politicians always play politics. That's what they do, right? And the RCMP in Canada is the higher up positions in Canada are appointed positions. They're political positions.
Right.
They're not
has nothing to do with how much work you put in, how much time you put in. It's not merit based.
It's generally well connected officers who get appointed.
Political appointees.
Yeah, they're political.
To our police force.
It's basically,
which is just atrocious.
It's really atrocious.
It's insane.
It's pretty horrible, and it's. I was even reading they set out their criteria for what they're gonna do their investigation on, and one of the first things that they say is they want to uncover gender-based
violence or something.
Gender-based violence, which is like completely missing the point. Completely 100%. Missing the point of this entire thing. And then
who cares?
Once
everyone's dead, what does it matter?
And I think they're maybe referring to Wortman, like they're still trying to allude to this idea that Wortman was set off by his girlfriend and went on a rampage.
Well, and also I think they're trying to link it to that shooting at that Quebec women's college too in the 80s.
Oh, really?
Yes, I think that's more what
the Polytechnic.
Yes, the Polytechnic killings, because that was all women.
Right. But that was a real mass shooter event because he was targeting women.
Correct, but
he was like the original incel.
But their whole narrative is that it needs to follow that as well, right?
And
that kind of progressive.
So this whole
nonsense.
Investigation, right from the get-go, is being launched on ideological lines rather than just a truth-telling, fact-finding.
Just trying to find what happened.
Yeah, to tell people the truth.
Yeah.
And so I'm losing my hope quickly already in that there's going to be any justice found in this. Maybe some more interesting facts will be found.
It would be nice if the victims' families could get every single fucking goddamn cent out of his.
I think that's what they're trying to. Yeah, that's what they're trying to do.
That would be great.
Yeah, but I just think after Trudeau criminalizes thousands of Canadians. And then
peaceful, law-abiding people who have not hurt
people,
anyone or have threatened to hurt anyone.
Makes them criminals through prohibition.
Yep.
Okay, let's just be clear.
Yeah, it's just prohibition.
Yeah, it's prohibition. Correct. Prohibition laws. And immediately makes them criminals. And now they're going to slap us in the face with this like ideologically based. And it's even doing things like we're doing our investigation based on trauma-informed care and harm reduction. And I'm very familiar with that because of the field that I work in.
Right.
I'm familiar with those terms. And I'm not necessarily against them on their face, but that shouldn't be the goals of this investigation. This investigation is not to
a witch hunt for who is a feminist killer or anything like that.
And
it's ridiculous.
It's just so absurd, and it makes me so frustrated that the government is going about it this way. And I think it's
completely absurd.
It's actually despicable of them.
It's despicable.
It's despicable.
It's actually offensive.
Yeah, it's very
offensive in the way that offensive is meant to be.
It's offensive. It's spitting in the face of the victims, that this doesn't, the facts about what happened to them doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That they are
and that
the truth about the circumstances is just totally irrelevant.
And that very well maybe, I mean, just going through the list here, at least half of them could have been saved with just an alert.
Right, exactly.
From the RCMP.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then especially because they already knew who he was right away.
Yeah.
Like that's the real crime. They are complicit in this.
Absolutely.
The RCMP are complicit in this. If you didn't speak up as an officer in this, and you can't prove it, you are complicit in this shit. This is bullshit.
I agree.
This is complete bullshit.
I think there needs to be a lot more accountability to.
They need to be like either resigning, or people need to be demanding their resignations.
Yeah.
Right, like they should. If you were in,
and that should start at the top with Campbell, the superintendent. He's been terrible on this.
He's been a politician about this
exactly.
the entire time, protecting his position.
Doing PR
stunts and campaigns. He's completely involved. He needs to step down immediately.
Yeah,
immediately. He has no business.
So we are calling on Campbell.
Yeah, we're calling on you to step down, dude.
Resign.
Like, shut the fuck up. Get out of here, you hoser.
Yeah, it's really terrible. It's really sad. But just another note on the RCMP's just total incompetence. And during this whole shooting time, there was one of the fire stations.
Oh man!
And I didn't include this in the timeline of the events, but right. I just want to say it just so people really get
the incompetency
of how terrible it is.
Yeah.
There was a police officer who I believe it was on the April 18th. I could be wrong. Could have been the 19th.
It was when he switched his vets.
Oh, was it? Okay.
So that would have been the 19th.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
He gathered a number of people in the area into the local fire hall. Okay, and
to protect them, because he gave a shit about what he was doing. He actually cared about his oath.
Yeah,
good for that guy.
Yeah, he gathered a bunch of people and brought them in, and then two other RCMP officers arrived at the scene and opened fire on this police officer, thinking that he was Wortman, into a crowd of people. Thankfully, no one was hurt.
Thank God.
But like
that we know of, maybe they were. We just don't know. Yeah,
we don't know.
Yeah.
This is just like, how could you not just radio?
It makes no sense that this dude isn't in radio contact with his guys. Going, I'm here at this fire station. Roger. Okay, I'm gathering all the public in here. Okay, Roger. Like, it's very very simple. Like, just communication.
Yeah, unless Wortman was on the radio too, and they weren't sure who was who. That would be the only
which would actually make a little bit of sense, but let's not give them arguments.
Yeah,
right. Like, let's.
But it just goes.
They haven't told us that
the dereliction of duty that these officers carried out. Honestly, that if they're taking on the responsibility to serve and protect, they it was criminal negligence. They
absolutely.
They could have,
at the very least,
they could have at any point contacted the provincial government to put out an emergency alert to hit everybody's phones and go on every television and every radio station. They didn't do that.
They knew who he was from the beginning. They knew what he was driving, and they didn't do anything.
It was a complete dereliction of duty. It's criminal negligence.
Yeah.
Criminal negligence.
They should all resign.
I think there should be criminal charges.
There should be.
And not to get, we're getting heated here, but if you just reading, like, you guys heard the whole story, it's just so infuriating.
It's ridiculous.
All the facts.
It's beyond ridiculous.
Yeah, it's so absurd. And there should be mass, resignations, criminal investigations. But, our prime minister has the gall to defend them. And again, because it's a political appointment.
And our population is so just weak.
Yeah.
They will not.
No, the public isn't putting the pressure. And part of why I'm doing this is because I want the public to put the pressure on these government officials
100%.
Because this was criminal what happened. And I think there needs to be some accountability. And also, we're not going to have a more peaceful society where people aren't allowed to, defend themselves, and where they're made to be criminals by their own government and their own government who says they're going to protect them can't do it.
And not can't, refuses to do it. It's not can't. They
could
refuse to.
Yeah, and
right.
That is, I think, just it's really, really despicable behavior. And I encourage everybody, support the families. I know there's a few GoFundMes out there and stuff, but also if you're Canadian, start putting pressure on the Canadian government to do more on this. If you're not Canadian, go on Canadian government social medias and start putting pressure on them. I'm trying to sound the alarm bells to this, and this is a really horrific tragedy that was carried out by a terrible person and was made worse by
an absolute
by
animal.
the people who are supposed to be keepers of the peace.
Yep.
But anyway, Skyler, do you maybe just plug your stuff one more time?
I do have one more thing to say.
Okay, sorry.
That we missed. This will be the very end. We're not going to go off on it for a long time. Okay. So, at the last bit of our research into this, we found a strange video by a woman in Nova Scotia. Well, I actually don't know if she's in Nova Scotia. She's Canadian. I can tell by how she talks. Doing like a little profile on Wortman. She released the video on YouTube on April 20th. And she found a strange article that names Gabriel Wortman, a denturist, names the street that his practices on, names particular landmarks like the Tim Hortons and stuff like that. And so this article is found or was put out by Frank Magazine based out of Halifax. The article is now behind a paywall. So you'll just have to look at the links and you can see the YouTube video about it. But it names this motherfucker by name, names what he does. It was put out before the shooting. Very strange. This article,
it's written almost like a fiction or something.
Yes.
Like a short story.
Yes, this magazine is like it's allegedly satire and fictional.
Yeah.
But they write this very, very odd account of a Gabriel Wortman who is a denturist.
Yeah.
It's super strange. We found that.
It could have been Gabriel Wortman himself. It seems like the author was some kind of pseudonym, from what I remember.
Definitely. It was from an old cop show.
Yeah.
Car 45, or it was black and white. It was really long ago.
Yeah.
And the author was one of the officers in the show who wrote it. So
that was the name.
That was the name of the author. So very, very odd. Look that up in the notes. That's basically all I have to say. Look me up at To The Gulag on Facebook and Minds. And I think that we should read out the victims' names, though, before we go, hey?
Sure.
I'll start. So Jamie and Greg Blair, couple who ran a gas fitting company with Greg's older sons from a previous marriage, described as the life of the party and well-liked by neighbors.
Sean McLeod and Elena Jenkins, the couple who lived in Wentworth and were Wortman's first victims after he came out of hiding for 6 hours. They were both correctional officers.
Lisa McCauley, elementary school teacher. She had bought the home that was part of the dispute between Wortman's uncle, Glenn Wortman. He had partially owned the house at one point.
Heather O'Brien, Kristen Beaton, and an unborn child. Continuing care nurses, Heather and Kristen were continuing care nurses who went to see a client when they were murdered in the area that Wortman was in.
Jolene Oliver, Aaron Tuck, and Emily Tuck. Among the first to die, they were neighbors of Wortman.
Gina Goulet, a denturist from Shubenacadie. No known connection to Wortman, however, worked in the same field.
Corey Ellison, social worker from Portapique. No known connection to Wortman. Investigated one of the fires Wortman set, was probably killed because she saw Wortman and became a witness.
Tom Bagley, a retired firefighter, died by one of the houses set on fire, most likely because he was a witness.
Lillian Hislop, killed in the area of the fire in Wentworth. Neighbor reported it was around the time that she normally walks in the morning. Motivation was most likely that she witnessed Wortman.
Heidi Stevenson, the RCMP officer who was killed trying to stop Wortman.
Frank Glushin and Dawn Madison, a retired couple living in the retirement home near the killer. No known connections.
Joey Weber, a man in his 30s, apparently shot by Wortman while conducting errands.
Peter and Joy Bond were both killed in their home in Portapique in their pajamas. No known connection to Wortman. House was not burned down.
Joanne Thomas and John Zell. Home near Portapique was burned down, presumed dead. No confirmation of bodies found. All right, thanks, guys. Peace.